and welcome back to my channel. I hope you can see me okay. Today I'm going to, as part of Autism Awareness Month, which covers the whole of April, I thought I would do a video today kind of on the nature of stereotypes. I recently watched a really good TED Talk from 2009. I will post the link below so that if you're interested you might want to watch it and see it for yourself. And I thought it was really relevant to autism. This TED Talk wasn't about autism. It was a talk by a Nigerian novelist called Chimamanda Adichie. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I haven't read any of her books myself. You may or may not be aware of her, but apparently she's quite a famous novelist. I don't read much fiction, so. The TED Talk was entitled "The Danger of a Single Story," and this was in relation to her experience as a Nigerian woman living in the USA, and the sort of stereotypes she came across to do with her sort of nationality as a Nigerian woman, and the sort of assumptions people made based on her background. And I thought this was really relevant to autism. There's a lot of parallels here, so I took a lot of notes. So if I'm looking down a lot, that's just because I'm referring to my notes. I hope that's okay. In the TED Talk, Chimamanda tells the story of how she found her authentic cultural voice as a Nigerian woman. And of course, this has parallels with autism, because as an autistic person, I'm trying to find my authentic voice as an autistic person, which I guess is part of the reason why I'm doing these YouTube videos, as a way of kind of developing that voice, really. But obviously each person's voice is going to be unique, is going to be distinct, because we're all very different people. We might all share the diagnosis of autism, but we're not the same. We're very different, and that's really important. That's why I gave my pseudonym, if you like, is Autism is Individual, because of that. That's one of the main messages I want to get across, really, is our individuality. Now, Chimamanda warns that if we hear only a single story about another person or country, we are at grave risk of misunderstanding. Now, this has parallels with autism representation and that of other minorities. I actually think this is very pertinent, very relevant for all minorities, really. Often a single story is propagated over and over again about a particular nationality, a particular culture, a particular ethnicity, religion, you name it, neurotype, and that's how stereotypes get made. I mean, as Chimamanda very well, as she put it very well, really, there's nothing, stereotypes are not wrong. They're not inherently wrong. All they are is incomplete. All the stereotypes are based on truth. But it's a condensed version of the truth, a very narrow version of the truth, based on just one or two stories, but usually just one story, about, say, particular characteristics that are then generalised outward from an individual or a small number of people, and generalised outward to the whole of that group. And that's really dangerous, because it dehumanises people and takes away their individuality and authenticity by reducing them to a singular entity. And that's really dangerous. Now, Chimamanda did not know, growing up in Nigeria, she did not know that people like her could exist in literature. Now, this has parallels with the historical underrepresentation of a diversity of autism. I have not come across many representations of autism in literature that I can relate to. very, very few and far between. And certainly as I was growing up, I don't think there was any. No, you know, it's all men, wasn't it? It's all usually, well, we had boys, you know. Where was the female representation? And even now, I mean, we are getting more female representation now, but if you think, say, for example, of The Bridge, or I don't know if you've seen The Bridge, that detective series where one of the characters in there, a female, had Asperger's. I only actually ended up watching, I think, 1 or 2 because I was so put off by it, and it's just like, no. Well, I'm not really into crime dramas anyway, but I thought I'd watch it just to kind of see how they represented it, but it's all really very, very cliched. And I just couldn't relate to the character, and, you know, that kind of really sort of like rather kind of cold, detached, uber objective personality I just can't relate to. And the curious incident of A Dog in the Nighttime, I guess, is one of the main representations of autism in more recent years. I don't know if you've read The Curious Incident. I mean, it's a really funny book. It had been, you know, stitches, some of it. It's very funny, but just really, really stereotyped. I mean, there's certainly, sure, there are going to be some people out there who are very much like Christopher in A Curious Incident, but that doesn't mean we're all going to be like him. So it's very removed from my own experience of autism. I mean, the protagonist, Christopher, is good at maths and puzzles. I'm absolutely hopeless at maths and puzzles. And he displays very, very inappropriate behaviour to the point of caricature. Whereas in reality, I mean, as I say, there are certainly autistic people out there who will display very, very inappropriate behaviour, but there are many autistics whose behaviour, particularly as we get older, is likely to be more conforming with other people's expectations, because we're very good at covering up. You know, we learn to mask. I mean, those, you know, with an average, above average intellectual ability and verbal ability, we can. I mean, not all of us, but, you know, a great number of us do try and conform. And that means that although we might sometimes make slip-ups and social faux pas, they're likely to be quite subtle, not as blatantly inappropriate as what was displayed by Christopher. The few representations I have come across of autism that I can relate to is a novel called The State of Grace. It's a good novel, check it out. It's actually written by Rachel Lucas, who's actually got Asperger's herself, and her daughter's got Asperger's. And M in the Middle, which is written by the girls at Limpsfield Grange, which is one of the few, I think it's the only state school in the UK for girls with autism or related communication problems. And that was a very good book and very relatable, because I could relate to the characters. There's a lot of female characters, you know, they were trying to fit in, you know, into makeup, into, you know, I don't wear makeup anymore. I did go through a phase when I wore makeup, but, you know, but this kind of idea that autism isn't always kind of like really, really different in a really obvious way from other people, and it's more subtle than that, and I thought that was just made it more relatable to me and my own experience. So I could relate to what Chimamanda was saying there, even though she was talking in her context as a Nigerian woman, but, you know, parallels with autism. And Chimamanda had been raised only on British books in Nigeria. Only on British books, you know? That's a bit like us autistics reading books just written by neurotypicals about us. There's a certain alienation there, a detachment. It's far better to read books actually written by other autistics, as the voice is more authentic. Now, poverty is another example where the single stories are told. For example, only seeing someone as poor and no more than poor. Seeing someone as autistic and no more than autistic, or reduced to a particular cliched, stereotyped idea of autism. Chimamanda has faced patronising but well-meaning pity. For example, an American roommate assumed that she can't use a stove based on negative stereotypes of Africa, even before they had met her. So even before they had met her, they had formed this assumption that she would not be able to use a stove. Now, autistic people are often patronised or pitied in similar ways, as people might assume that we are incapable of doing certain activities or need to be wrapped up in cotton wool without taking the time to actually get to know us first and find out first hand what our real strengths and weaknesses actually are, as we are all different. I mean, it's really, really dehumanising to make an assumption on anyone based on a characteristic, based on their nationality, based on a disability, anything. That is, it's just not a done thing, but people do it all the time, and it's really very offensive and patronising. So I thought that was another interesting parallel. As Chimamanda puts it about her American roommate, she felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Have any of you ever had someone express their sympathy when you tell them that you are autistic? As if being autistic is an unyielding negative. I mean, I've actually had this once. When I told someone once I was autistic, they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." Why sorry? There's nothing wrong with being bloody autistic. Go figure. I mean, come on, okay? It's really, really patronising, and it's like, I guess it just shows ignorance, really. I mean, yeah, ignorance, and I suppose you can't blame someone for being ignorant if the only information they're reading is, of a very negative portrayal. But that's the thing, this limited information, these limited portrayals, which end up creating these harmful stereotypes. Now, there is a single story of Africa, which is one of catastrophe. Likewise, historically, there was a single story of autism as catastrophe. Attempts have been made to overturn this narrative, and counter-narratives have emerged, which emphasise how autism can be positive. However, this is a really good trend, by the way. It is good that, there are these counter-narratives, because autism isn't an unyielding negative. But we must equally be careful not to go too far in the opposite direction and overly sanitise autism by downplaying the challenges and disabilities, as that would also be a single story, okay? Because autism, it isn't an unyielding negative. You can have a happy and content life and be autistic. But I think that the danger in kind of this sort of hyper-sanitised version of autism, it's just a difference. Yes, it is a difference, and it does contain maybe some positives for some people, and that's great, but it can also be very disabling, and we must not forget that. I don't like this idea when people go on about autism not being a disability, because it can be a disability, and for many people. And even if it's not a disability for one person, they do need to be mindful that for others it might be a disability. So constantly being aware of your own subjectivity here, and not assuming that what's relevant for you or your truth is someone else's truth. That's really very, very important, because we don't want to create counter stereotypes, and by doing that diminish someone else's equally valid lived experience. I mean, to me, autism is a disability, and it contains many, many negatives, but there are some positives I can see about my autism as well, so it's important to have that kind of nuanced perspective, I think. So, the story would not inherently be wrong, because all stereotypes contain truth. It's just that, any single story is going to be incomplete. So we must be careful that we don't fall into the trap of creating counter-stereotypes, but instead any counter-narrative must reflect the diversity and complexity of the autistic population, as all our stories represent equally valid truths. Okay, I'm going to stop this video now because I don't want it to run out on me, and I'm going to carry on in part 2. Okay, so carrying on in part 2 now.